Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. My name is Jack Daly, and my partner here is Caryn Kopp, and we're here presenting you B12, which is that injection of sales vitamin that will help you generate more business with less work. And these are bite-sized type vitamins for you to take whenever you need them. Feel free to share them with your community, with your colleagues, and with, in fact, your customers and prospects, because they'll appreciate the advice as well. Caryn, we're going to talk about a concept that I call swim coaches. I'll give it to you to just tee up the question.
Yeah, so tell us about the concept of swim coach. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so, I'm going to start and just say, look, let's take the mask off of it and call it what most people are comfortable with, and that is centers of influence. The point that I like to make with so many of my clients is sometimes your very best customer will never buy or use your service, but could send you a lifetime of business. And so I teach this with a story about me learning how to swim so that I could do the Ironman. And at 58 years old, I didn't know how to swim. Now, most people go, how could that be? But most people, quite frankly, don't really know how to swim. Like, could you swim 2.4 miles in deep water in the ocean on the clock and be timed? Most people would say no to that. So that's what I needed to learn, because I wanted to do the Ironman. And so I hired a swim coach. His name was Steve. And he was tremendous. But he didn't just teach me how to swim, because eventually he introduced me to a bike shop owner who suited me up with the perfect bike. And the bike on the triathlon is really important because it's 112 miles that you're racing. And this beautiful bike I get, and people go, gosh, 112 miles on a bike, what's your ass feel like when you're done? And quite frankly, you're not in the saddle that much. And the reason is not the bike, but the bike fit. And so Steve introduced me to somebody called the Bike Butler, and he actually took a hacksaw to portions of my brand new bike to fit it personally to me. Steve went on to introduce me to a nutritionist, because I needed to find a way to sustain myself. It takes me about 13 hours to do that race. And they don't feed you along the way. You got to figure that out yourself. And there's certain muscles that you use that really need to be attended to. So Steve introduced me to my strength coach. Now I'm going to just stop because he had a number of other people. But he put this network together and he explained it to me. And he said, look, I just figured when I came to California from Boston that I was going to focus on triathletes as swim students. And I figured that if I could help them be better triathletes in any dimension, to help them with any of their needs, they would stay with me longer. Now I start thinking like this is sales, not just swimming, right? And then he said, and then the network ends up becoming a referral source amongst one another as well. Well, I'm going to tell you that that's not just the case, that his students become a referral network, because I'm forever referring people into Hank and Steve and the people that are doing all this stuff for me. And so here's what I want to really underscore how impactful this can be. If you were to buy a good triathlon bike, it would cost probably, let's just say $7,000. Now, I said to Steve, how many people are you sending over to Hank, the bike shop, on a monthly basis? And he gave me a number. And I said, what percentage do you think are buying a bike from him? And he said, probably 50%. I said, Steve, you're wrong. It's more than 50%, because the people that you're sending over already trust your recommendation. And selling is the transfer of trust. But we'll just use 50%. So then I said, how much the bike? And we said, $7,000. And so we did the math, and it was like a lightning bolt for Steve, the swim coach, when I did the math for him and said, do you realize in the last 7 years, you sent more than $1 million of bike sales to Hank? And then I looked at him and he's like, his face is in shock. And I said, and by the way, how many bikes have you bought from Hank? And he said, none. And so a guy that never bought a bike from Hank because he already had 3 bikes, was responsible for $7 million worth of sales in 7 years. And
Right.
so imagine trying to sell a bike at a time compared to nurturing a relationship with 10 swim coaches. If
Mhm.
I were a bike shop owner, that's all I would need to keep happy would be those 10. So I challenge the listener here with this question. Who are the swim coaches in your business?
That was fascinating, that story. And I wonder how often he said thank you, also that bike owner, for goodness sake. So for the people who have tuned in here, how do they find a swim coach for themselves? And then how do they nurture that relationship to create the situation that you described?
Yeah, that's a great follow-up question, and it doesn't surprise me coming from a door opener. Those follow-up questions are where the gold is, right? The
That's
first
right.
thing I would tell the listener is I have a free magazine series on my website. That website is jackdalysales.com, and the magazine is called Get Jacked. And on the cover of one of the 4 magazines, the cover story is, who is your swim coach? So an awful lot of follow-up detail that it's a 2-page article, so we're not talking a lot of depth, but the listener could go to my website, grab that, pull that down, and really get deep into what your question was to me. But very simply, what I would tell you is you have to identify what they look like. What will make a good swim coach a good referral center of influence in your business? Just think that thing through, and maybe the clue is somebody that's already operating like that with you that you could get 10 more, right? I built several businesses in the mortgage business before I became a speaker. And what I would tell my sellers is instead of trying to get homeowner A and homeowner B, one transaction at a time, build a relationship with the realtors, build a relationship with the builders. And if you were to build a relationship with 10 really stellar realtors that did a lot of business, you just need to keep those 10 happy, and they'll just send you their borrowers, send you their home buyers on a regular ongoing basis. And usually a top realtor or builder, they'll generate 10 or 20 sales a month, and they'll parse them out to 2 or 3 people. So I know successful sellers in the mortgage business, that's all they do. And by the way, the realtor that's referring them the business, it never did a loan with them personally because they didn't move and they didn't need a loan. So that's the deal there. But let me flip this onto you. How do people with swim coaches, do you see it? Do you see better results? How do you get the most out of the experience? From your perspective, and I know it's a little bit of a stretch in the door opener, but you're so knowledgeable. I want to tap into you as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And even though, yes, we are best known for the door opener service, I have swim coaches for me, right? For how do you think I got started? It's not always about the onesie twosie, although those are very important, and especially when they're strategically chosen. But just as you would strategically choose the prospects you want to go after, so is the same is true for your swim coach. Not every swim coach is going to be a great swim coach for you. Which are the swim coaches who will lead you to the kind of business that you want? Sometimes they serve the same clientele as you. Sometimes they have the information that you need, right? So it's important when you decide where you're going to spend your time from a business development standpoint, that you're nurturing the right relationships with people who serve the same market you serve. And if you look at the difference between like your scenario, the story that you just told versus somebody who doesn't have that, the difference is $1 million just to get started, right? And that's over what period of time? So my suggestion would be, take a look at all the different people who could potentially be swim coaches for you, and maybe pick the top 3 who are serving the market you serve, or serving the market you'd like to serve, but you're not serving now. And then to figure out what is the way you're going to have a relationship with them. And when you have a relationship, it's not about them giving to you, it's about you giving to them first.
Perfect. Absolutely on the money. And how long would you say that you and I have known one another and you know and worked collegially? I don't know. It's
Well,
over 10 years,
over 10 years. And
right?
do you remember when we met? You came and you gave a presentation to my EO chapter. I had
Yep.
written the Path to the Cash book about the answers for the objections. And I said, hey, Jack, will you take a look at this and tell me what you think? And you called me a couple days later and said, this is gold. Everybody has to be reading this. And then it just kept going from there to the point where we're producing content together.
Yeah, well, you know, and I think it's beneficial for the listener to take that story a little bit further and just say, hey, and then I had assembled people that were in different slots, like the bike seller and the bike fitter and the nutritionist, but in my business, and you fit into one of those slots. And I said, hey, why don't you all come to California?
That's
And
right.
we created something called the Wheel, where
That's
we were
right.
interacting with one another. And in effect, that was a demonstration of the swim coach concept, right?
Yeah. So let's describe that a little bit, because you absolutely did create that. So we called it the Wheel. Jack was in the middle, and he had times where his clients said, hey, Jack, I need to know the person who's going to get me in the door with my most important prospects. My sellers are busy. And he would say, you need to call Caryn. Then sometimes his people would say, listen, we need to find a great recruiter. He would say, hey, you need to call Kathleen, right? So there were people in each of those spots, so that when his clients came to him and said, I need this, he always had the expert to refer them to. What's interesting, because Jack created that and brought us all to California, and we had this great dinner with wine. We all got to know each other, but I do business with each of those people. I refer business to Kathleen. I refer business to Dan and the other people who were at the table that night, and they refer business to me. So even though that happened probably 8-10 years ago, those relationships have continued over time and are a very important part of my world as being one spoke of the wheel, and to you as well.
Yeah, and we don't, you know, back then in the beginning, we would have thought each other in a very narrow context of business relationship. And yet the people that were in that group and in that environment have evolved into being first friends and secondly,
right.
business.
Right.
And then I want to address one last item here. It's a biggie, because when I've talked to different people, they've brought this question to me, and that is, what about compensation? Is there pay back? Is there pay moving for the referral? You're paying for the referral. Some guys have even been this blunt to call it a kickback type of thing, and that's offensive to me. But here's what I would tell you is that I'm going to do what's in the best interest of my client, of my customer. And that is first and foremost. So when I have a customer that says, my sales guys are absolutely terrific at closing deals, I hate that they spend so much time out in the marketplace trying to get through the gatekeeper and get an appointment and get a meeting. When they get in there, but they're spending 90% of their time doing that and 10% of the time getting the deal done. And so it's like, and I'm going, well, you just described Caryn Kopp's door opener company like perfectly. We need to go there. Now, if Caryn wanted to give me compensation for that, that's a secondary thing. I'm not offended by it. I wouldn't say no to it, but it's not like, hey, Caryn, I've got some clients here that I could send to you. What are you going to pay me for them? That rubs me the wrong way. So I'm open to referral fees, but that shouldn't be the driver. The driver should be placing solutions with the needs of your client. And I don't think that I, for example, am the solution to my client on everything that they bring up. Right.
Right. That's a good point. And a couple of best practices is that when your swim coach refers you to someone else, whether it's another center of influence or if it's a client, make sure you keep your swim coach in the loop on what's happening. Because if for some reason the conversation stalls, your swim coach can give a little nudge to that conversation and help get it over the finish line sometimes as well. last tip from me, which is make it easy for people to refer you to other people. I have a little networking blurb that I provide, not a 20-page PowerPoint deck, and it's not a big attachment. It's like 3 to 5 sentences that my centers of influence can use when they're making an email introduction for me with another person. Make sure you make it easy for your centers of influence and your swim coach to refer you.
And I'm just going to marry my comment up on that particular point, and I'm going to challenge the community of listeners here, and that is this: 90% of my business. Now, I'm an old guy that's been around a long time, so maybe the number is high because of this, but 90% of my business today is repeat and referral business. And imagine if you were able to get your business to that level. As a professional speaker, if I use a speaker bureau one time a year, it is an anomaly. My business is, I don't need to pay a speaker bureau for booking me because I'm so well taken care of when 90% is repeat and referral. So that's a nice mark for a seller to strive for. How much more in referral business can I get? Swim coaches, a good stable of swim coaches will up your referral rate. That's all I can tell you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us for Sales B12, and to make sure you share this with your colleagues and your friends, and tune into the next Sales B12 from us.